a fireside chat entitled Solving Problems in the Changing Educational Landscape by Understanding Resilient Ecosystems. So we're going to invite up all of our speakers for this chat. First up, Dr. Christine King, Director, Learn to Learn. Y.S. Oberoi, Co-founder and CEO, Cleffer. Dr. Rose Susan D. Barty, Department Chair and Professor at the University of Florida. And Dr. Tom Kane, Senior Lecturer, Business Analytics, Sterling Management School. Please welcome them up to the stage.
So, welcome everyone. We're going to start the session by asking everyone to close their eyes. Everyone needs to be quiet. We need a nice quiet room. I want you to close your eyes and imagine you are on a pristine island. It is a gorgeous island with fine sandy beaches, crystal clear waters, and lush vegetation. You are sitting on the trunk of an old tree that has fallen in the middle of a rainforest on the island. You watch as the sunlight breaks through the gap that has fallen, that the tree has made. You are captured by the beauty and take in what is around you. You notice small understory plants emerging, trying to capture the small patches of light. Complex symbiotic relationships exist. You can see epiphytes growing in the tree canopy, where the tree canopy provides support for the epiphytes to reach more sunlight and access more nutrients. A bird flutters past, dispersing seeds. You think about the interdependence of all the life around you. You even notice an ant feeding on the dew pack on the back of a caterpillar. You start feeling sleepy, but all of a sudden time appears to speed up. You feel still, but everything around you becomes cyclical. You realise what you thought was static is actually dynamic. You see there is balance even though what surrounds you keeps changing. Disturbance, balance, disturbance, balance, disturbance, balance. For 30 years now, I've been learning from nature, particularly about the processes that are inherent in nature that enable it to persist over time and be sustainable. These are particularly apparent in pristine ecosystems such as rainforests and islands. For the past 20 years, I've been trying to apply these same processes to design and facilitate people systems. Why would I do this? During more than 3 billion years of evolution, the planet's ecosystems have organised themselves in subtle and complex ways, so to maximise sustainability. Managing change processes in complex environments requires purposeful and systematic facilitation. I use the term eco-ability to describe how we can use the natural ecosystems around us to enhance our abilities, both psychological and physical, as well as other dimensions such as spiritual. Just like biomimicry, which uses nature to design hard systems, like technologies for the future, I've used nature to design soft systems, people systems. I believe we can use this concept to guide the way we enact change at multiple scales, including individuals, groups, teams, organisations and communities. In the final stages of his book, The Web of Life, Fritjof Capra provides a conceptual framework for the link between ecological communities and human communities. He calls for people to be eco-literate and states that being eco-literate means understanding the principles of organisation of ecological communities and using those principles for creating sustainable human communities. Sustainable ecosystems inherently have processes such as interdependence, flexibility, ecological cycles, resilience, adaptability, unpredictability, non-linearity, self-regulation, structural coupling, nesting, diversity, feedback loops. My experience has been that these processes are useful because not only do they provide useful design processes, but nature is also very often a common language and experience with people from diverse backgrounds, disciplines and cultures. A large part of facilitating change is being able to bring together all people into design processes to move in directions that they want to move and enable relationships and patterns within relationships to emerge that enhance collective learning. As with ecosystems, these processes enable people and communities to adapt and respond to problem situations as they arise. These concepts need to be combined to inform theories that support our own practice as educators. Within the concept of resilience, they are linked in different ways to support different notions of nature that underpin community and educational development. Is anyone asleep? Waking up. So that's a bit of background around ecosystems and nature and how we can look at those different principles and think about how might we apply those principles to people systems that we work with, the relationships that we work with, and the relationships we try and create in different educational landscapes. So given that in mind, we're going to pass to the panel members now, and they're going to talk about their own contexts and how those principles around ecological systems can apply and help inform what they're actually doing in practice. So we'll pass over.
Me to start? Okay. Okay, hi everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. So my name is Tom Kane. I run a program in Scotland at the University of Stirling in the Stirling Management School. My original background is artificial intelligence. I did a PhD in artificial intelligence decades ago. And my concern was that people from the humanities, the arts and the social sciences are being excluded from all of the exciting projects in artificial intelligence. And people who are often doing these to the detriment of many of us are just computer scientists. Now, I love computer scientists. I am a computer scientist. But we're missing out on the analytical skills of our English language majors and our geographers and our historians, and these are the texts of our civilizations. So I set up a program at the University of Stirling, which is Masters in Business Analytics, and to deal with the world as it is, we were taking in real-world problems from our local ecosystem and making those real-world problems about how our organizations have to change and how they have to adapt to artificial intelligence and making them part of our teaching. And we did that through inviting our arts graduates in through four themes that we used to form lenses on the learning. And those themes are disruption, because of the disruption throughout business and throughout the world and through society, and we all have a response to that. Ethics, because the ethics of today are extraordinarily complex. We have black box algorithms pushing us to directions in how we vote in elections, that look at our medical records and our activity records and our surfing records, and know about us in ways that we don't even know that we are known about. Sustainability, because all businesses have to be sustainable. And in the future, I'd like to think that there were going to be lots of businesses rather than 4 or 5 big businesses that we all either use or work for. And risk management. Risk management, because all companies have to deal with risk every single day. They have to look for opportunities and deal with threats. And they really have to big up the opportunities and diminish or mitigate the threats. So the principles that I'm holding to that are ecological are those that I trust that there are solutions in this world by dealing directly with the problems of change that are surrounding us, and that we can find that the world can tell us how we can change enough to bring, and I'm talking about nearly half of our graduates, into this exciting game of designing the future in an AI world that's still a human civilization. So roughly? That's a good place? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rose Susan Barty, and I currently serve as chair of the Department of Educational Leadership and Higher Education, where we prepare school leaders as well as university officials and other related policy advocates. This idea about ecology, or the resilience of the ecological system, is one that we operate in the university in general, because we prepare leaders. We provide them with the knowledge, the skills, and the dispositions to be able to go out and to impact a major change within how things are done. And so when we think about the preparation part of what is happening, particularly when we look at our principal preparation and what all we have to do in terms of preparing principals, both at the state level as well as within the university level, there's a need to have interconnectedness between policy and practice and preparation. And so when you think about the P cubed, a policy, practice, and preparation, you think about interconnectedness. You think about this ecosystem that shows intentionality has to be responded to in each of those areas. And so consequently, we have individuals who are prepared to be a principal in the school because they understand the importance of how the school operates within the community, how the school operates within the state, and how the school operates within the nation. And so there has to be synergy at all levels, because if one is outside of the alignment, then there creates the opportunity for problems. And so the ecology, or the ecological system, and the resiliency has to do with intentionality and alignment. And so consequently, again, whenever we see issues emerge, it is a result of misalignment because the policy was not followed appropriately, then the practice failed. The practice was not carried out appropriately, then in essence, we see the preparation was not fully carried out. So I think that's very key when we look at this idea of ecological resiliency in terms of policy, practice, and preparation.
Hello. Yeah. I very well correlate with the entire ecological resilience and the entire concept because I believe that when it comes to anything we all are doing here today, at the end of the day, we're trying to do some form of business, we're trying to create value, right? And we know that the hard fact today is that 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years of incorporation. Again, raises a big question on sustainability, right? Like why are businesses failing? Why do we all fail? And especially in the space of education, because it is one place that is very standardized. It is one place where it's very tough to innovate because everyone likes following a certain set of way in which they teach, right? Whether it's universities, whether it's schools. But yeah, of course there's change coming, which I can speak about from my country's side. Of course, there's a lot of social emotional learning that's happening. People are actually growing towards focusing on mental health of kids. They're taking away examinations. They're putting up optional examinations where you can choose to write where you want to write an exam. So, it's just how you can make your business a lot more sustainable is something that the nature teaches us, because if you cannot follow these principles, it's very, very difficult for anyone to sustain with respect to anything you're doing, whether you're creating value or you're trying to create an impact on other people. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Are we going on this one? Yeah, and I think what I hear from the three, and something for me is, it's the intentionality that you're talking about. We've had the same argument with, when people say, I don't know, with people here, you're all educators when we try and talk to people about action learning or action research, and they say, oh, but we do that anyway. And I see these principles that nature shows us, or intentions, are just that, they're just guiding intentions, and we can do them a little bit more systematically if we have a list. Now, if you look on your tables, there is a little list, because the topic that we have today is solving problems in the changing educational landscape by understanding resilient ecosystems. So on the table is just a one-pager. I don't expect you to read it now, but it's just something to take home. But it actually shows you the different ecosystem qualities. And then on the right-hand side, it actually says, well, what processes are needed in the educational landscape in relation to each of those ecosystem properties. So what we wanted to do now is just have people talk to the person next to them. So just try and pair up with someone and have 1 minute each, and just have a quick discussion about whether you think these ecological system principles might be helpful to you with maybe some problems that you see in the educational landscape, particularly in terms of relationships and partnerships. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes for that, and then we'll go for questions.
Okay, thanks everyone for taking part in that. What we would really like to hear is what you've been discussing, and if you've got any questions from your discussions at your table that you'd like to put up to the panel, and we could perhaps have a conversation about those things. So if anybody would like to come forward and let us hear what you've been talking about, that'd be great.
Thank you. My name's Tim McNevin. I'm the principal of a school in Canberra called Galilee School. And I proudly use the language that our school is part of an education ecosystem in Canberra. And the way and the context within which I use that language is with the idea of putting the learner at the centre of the conversation and to find an educational environment that suits them best, where they will find success most accessible for them. And I guess that's a bit of a noble aspiration in terms of what you're talking about. The conversation at our table was about how this notion of ecosystems, and Dr. King, your idea of the island where I think it was implied that the various elements of that nature system had codependency and relied on each other for success and to thrive. And our conversation was, how does this notion of resilient ecosystem exist alongside the problems of inequity in education and competition in education?
That's a great one. Do you want to start with that?
Well, I will chime into that. Clearly, we understand that educational systems may not have provided the most conducive climate for all learners, be it learners of different racial backgrounds, be it they are different genders, whatever the case is, these spaces may not be conducive for all. And so there is a need to be intentional about efforts that are taken to ensure that the learning context is one that is welcoming. And so there has to be some level of policies that are put in place to ensure the mental health and well-being of the students who are there, of the teachers who are there, and even of the administrators who are there, so that when families come into the school, they feel welcome by virtue of walking into a climate for which is saying, you belong here. And so I think there is credence to what you're asking about the need to have proactiveness in place based upon how students and families historically have not been welcomed into these contexts. And so clearly we have to, again, put in place those policies and practices, and within the universities, prepare our students to be able to deal and to respond in an equitable way in order to ensure equality occurs.
Can I maybe just also add to that the dangers of competition, they're in the ecological environment that we're all living in, and the truth of our world is kind of telling us what we have to respond to. So this wonderful approach. You know, if we didn't do anything for them, they'd be absolutely floundering. So it's great what you brought up there. Those are lovely things to balance.
Other questions?
Oh, even just conversations that people had at the table, if you want to talk about those.
So nobody had any thought about the ecological wild system that we're working in, and how we can respond to these lovely kind of metaphors to develop really kind and helpful educational tools. Don't feel shy about coming up if you've got something. I maybe just say something about the fear that I had. I was watching many of our arts graduates being baristas, and they're kind of wearing out their arms, and they're going home tired, and they're getting $12 an hour for what they're doing. They can't afford their homes, and they're watching a world of artificial intelligence developing where people are promising them free money for not doing any work, or an egalitarian society. Well, in Europe, we want to have lots of businesses. We want to have plurality of business and plurality of opportunity. And unless we fight for that through educational means, we will lose it, because the solutions will come from a hostile ecosystem which says one size fits all for everybody, whether it's some AI kind of tool for one thing or another, or we participate, all of us, and shape our society. So this danger of what's in the environment and the opportunity for us to evolve, I think it's a really important thing that we face in education.
Just to go on from that, I mean, one of the things that we see with the resilience literature and ecological systems is non-equilibrium systems. And there should be something on the handout about that, but they're very good for understanding, you know, non-linear systems and how we can actually think about the changes. When you look at how ecosystems go through this kind of conservation and then release and, you know, these kind of cyclical patterns, they're very similar to what people in organisations go to. You can almost translate the, you know, forming, storming, norming, performing over the top of that ecosystem model around how people work. So I think, you know, the non-equilibrium systems work in terms of resilience is really worth having a look at.
And you know what's interesting about this ecosystem and this model that's at play, the idea that whenever a threat comes into existence, and how do we respond to the threat? We can often think of those things that historically may not have been considered as belonging in these environments. And so on the flip side of it, we have to be mindful of deficit-minded thinking that serves as a way to eliminate threats. So what might those threats be? Those threats might be students who learn in a diversified ways. They may be students coming from families that do not look like traditional families, quote unquote. They may be students who come from minoritized communities. And so as a way to preserve and protect itself, the ecological system will sometimes find a way to eliminate the threats. So it's very important that in working in these contexts, we are not part of that problem that we are seeking to rid ourselves of. And so I think that's the part, Dr. King, that when I think about this idea of an ecosystem, what does the ecosystem do when it has to protect and preserve what it's seeking to perpetuate?
Any comments? Oh, yeah.
I'll give you an example from our master's course. We've got NHS Forth Valley, which is nearby Stirling University, and we've got Stirling Council, which is nearby Stirling University. And we have problems coming in the United Kingdom of health and social care. We're running out of money for both, and we're predicting billions are going to be required in the 10 years ahead. So either we let this trickle on, and we face it. And so what we've done at the university in the program is brought in the problem. The problem is that NHS has to change, and social services have to change. Social services have to have investment of money, but at the same time we have to show what will be saved by doing a new thing. So we're getting our students to innovate solutions that will show saving, an opportunity for investment, and then an opportunity for doing things better in the future on the real world problems that our NHS and social services are facing. That way our students are understanding the problems of our environment, they're participating with our local businesses, and they're engaging with a learning process inside the businesses to let them change bravely too. So this business of osmosis, of moving from one cell into another, has been very important. I'm trusting the ecosystem of our working environments and our love of businesses to show us the solutions to artificial intelligence living amongst us or thinking amongst us in every activity that we take part in.
I mean, also, when we speak about like, if we speak about potential threats, if you look at potential threats from the business side, from educating people, right? like when we look at innovation happening with AI at such a pace where platforms like OpenAI have come into picture, right, where each student, each learner has access to so much that probably a university might not want, right? So when we see things happen like that which are uncontrollable, which are not in the hands of a university to control to a great or a large extent, right? I mean, we got to adapt. We got to think of solutions that we can build as educators to climatize and limit as much as we can of the access that we provide. So, I mean, at my company, we're already building a solution for the same. We're trying to give access to educators, to universities, to schools, to put restrictions, to monitor and to gauge what is being searched, how much can be searched, what can be asked, what cannot be asked. So, I mean, of course, it's something you cannot help and you cannot deny access to, right? I mean, on a large level. So, I mean, again, adaptability, change, it's just something you got to accept, you got to work, you got to innovate with it, right? So innovation, again, is a very, very big byproduct of the entire ecosystem, the ecological system that we're talking about. And I feel as a business, I mean, what I take back today is that when we set key performance metrics for people working along with us in our companies, I feel we forget these metrics very easily because we don't keep them in mind, because at the end of the day we focus more on tangible metrics and tangible targets. So I mean, a good change definitely would be key performance metrics, updating them, modernizing it, keeping sustainability as a key performance metric, keeping self-regulation as a very, very good metric in the system. So if everyone in your team is working towards a few factors that we've discussed today or that you see on your table, I feel it's definitely going to be sustainable growth. You're going to go further ahead, and yeah, I mean, that's what I'm going to take back and implement from today. So yeah.
Where I often use the tool, and it's when you talk about performance indicators, I've used it a lot with project teams, because sometimes it's really difficult for people who might be quiet or don't have a voice, and particularly some of the cross-cultural work that I do, and it gives a bit of a tool for people to actually talk about the relationships that happen in the team. So sometimes I work with teams and I get them to map out all the stakeholders and their teams and what the relationships look like, and describe them. And then we look at the ecosystem model, and they look at it and go, oh, our relationships don't look anything like that. This is why we're not really functioning very well. So then we use a bit of a change process to say, well, this is where we are now, this is what our relationships look like, and then how do we actually move our relationships so that they look more like this sort of resilience ecosystem model, where we can be a bit more sustainable as a project team or as a larger multi-stakeholder group. But it's kind of like a checklist in a way, or that performance indicator.
In my previous response, I talked about the threats of the matter. There's another part of it when you think about more broadly the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So I went to the end of the analysis. I'll start now with the beginning. We have to consider what are the strengths of our ecosystem. When looking at our stakeholders, both primary stakeholders and secondary stakeholders, it's very important to assess that, because that then informs how we need to respond to those areas that I mentioned earlier, the PQ, the policy, the practice, as well as the preparation. And then when we consider what the weaknesses are, and being very honest and transparent about those things that we may or may not do well, and identifying those things, but not identifying them as a sense of that we are not able to change them, but it certainly provides us room for areas for improvement. And then we have the opportunities, because there are opportunities that are both embedded and ones that can be created. And so clearly, when we consider the SWOT in its entirety, it does help us to make an ecological system that is much more resilient and responsive to the needs of our stakeholders at large. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats must holistically be considered.
Yeah, I mean, I would again like to just close my stance by saying something small. So, I mean, coming from a B2B SaaS company, so especially catering in the education sector, we focus on the entire ecosystem. So we position ourselves as an ecosystem management software. We don't focus ourselves, and we don't call ourselves with a particular tool associated that we build, right? Because we understand the importance of having an ecosystem. We understand the importance of relationships, right? And we hope that we have discussed the same today and conveyed across the same message, because, I mean, that's what we are trying to do here.
And I guess one last point, I can see time's up, is that, you know, we talk about resilience, but now in the ecosystem world, we're trying to find models now rather than resilience. We're looking at robustness. You know, resilience is about bouncing back after you've been disturbed, had some sort of disturbance. But now we're looking at how do we create systems, whatever they are, so that they're actually more robust, so that they don't, you know, get impacted and have to bounce back in the first place. So that's another point to do. Anyway, so that's time up, and if anyone has any questions for any of us after, we'll be around for a little bit. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause.